What is the resonance of who we are that is most satisfying to our soul? Not what looks like on paper, not what you read a book about how to be a business leader. What is it that truly resonates your soul? What is it that satisfies your soul? Here's a map to see that.
Today on Supernormalized, I sit down with Alexander Dunlop and Viki Scudieri, the husband and wife team behind the source cards. They teach a surprising idea. The ordinary 52 card deck is a sacred mathematical blueprint for the solar year and a tool for reading your life design. Alexander brings Harvard philosophy, Wall Street strategy, and deep initiatory training across shamanic and theological traditions, while Viki brings somatic healing, intuitive mastery, and decades of creative work as a healer and artist. Together, they show you how 13 birth cards reveal life purpose, natural gifts, recurring patterns, dynamics, and timing cycles that guide practical choices. Listen for a clear, grounded conversation that moves from the math and symbolism of the deck to real life applications. And then learn how to make better choices at work, repair your relationships, and dissolve stubborn patterns. Expect vivid stories from their own personal journeys and sharp philosophical framing and an approachable healing tool that anyone can try at home. I found this conversation very interesting. I never considered the plain playing cards to be something that could be a tool for spiritual and life advancement. You'll enjoy this episode. I certainly did. Welcome to Supernormalized, Alexander and Viki.
Thank you so much for having us, CJ.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really curious about your story because from what I understand of it, you've created something out of what most people would consider very ordinary that actually helps people to evolve and change. So I've got to ask, first of all, how did a Harvard philosopher and a Barbara Brennan trained healer end up teaching a system on a deck of playing cards? I mean, that's wild.
It's a long story.
It is wild. It is wild and wonderful.
And whenever I've shared my full story to people, they tell me it's the most interesting life story they've ever heard. It was a journey. It started with a spiritual awakening when I was 17. Of course, it wasn't random. It was intentional from a higher perspective. And that spiritual awakening when I was 17 led me on a journey. And through many different twists and turns, like seminary, going to India to be a Swami. Meanwhile, I had studied philosophy at Harvard, as you mentioned, and I worked on Wall Street. I had a whole corporate career. But I had this spiritual yearning as well. It led me through psychedelics, recreational drugs, ayahuasca, you name it. And I was searching, looking for what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? And then it was at a party in Brooklyn in my 30s that an old friend who I knew from Burning Man, he's like, hey, what's your date of birth? And I'm like, August 30th. Why? And he says, oh, that means your birth card is the 9 of hearts. And you're going to go through tragic endings of the heart and you're going to have to learn to let go and move on. The day before he told me that, I had divorce papers on the table with my ex-wife. So it really was a tragic ending of the heart. And that was my first introduction to the real meaning of these cards. And there wasn't much known about it. It was still taught as a fortune-telling system. And through my own research and meditation, I came to realize what it is. It's a spiritual toolkit. It comes from the tree of life, the flower of life. It was once known as the book of life, little unbound book of life. And it helps us to know who we are and why we're here. Based on math, we have 13 cards in our life path based on our date of birth, and that's our human template. And when we know that, then we know our direction. We have a simple map. We still have free will. You still choose how you want to play the cards, but at least now you have the map. You have the information to support your decision making. And so I started a professional practice 15 years ago to coach people, literally coach people to play their cards right. And here we are 15 years later, and my beloved wife joined forces with me a few years ago, and we're doing our best. It's a mission for us to get the word out, spread the word that this ancient knowledge was hidden in plain sight all this time. It provides us with a map that helps us transcend the binary, where we're stuck in a binary, left, right, politically and religiously, true, false. No, I'm true, you're false, I'm right, you're wrong. This is a model of reality that transcends that simplistic binary and gives us a 52 factorial model of reality where there's literally infinite possibilities, but it's a finite system. And that's our space-time matrix. That's the way it was set up. It was intelligently designed that way. And there's much more. I feel like I'm saying a lot. I'm going to
No, that's good.
pause
That's
there,
good.
and let Vicky tell her story because she has her own story as well.
Yeah, sure. Vicky, please tell us how did this join in with your understanding of the world?
Yeah, so my journey started with a medical issue in my late 20s. I went to a bunch of doctors. They couldn't figure out what was going on with me. I went to an energy healer, and within, it was like 1 to 3 days, my issue was resolved after the healing. So that really catapulted me into the world of the unseen, energy healing, spirituality, God, what is God, who is God, all of these things, just diving in, traveling, and soul searching. I ended up going to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing many years later, doing lots of weekend workshops, getting lots of tools in my toolbox to around energy healing, shifting belief systems, helping people to feel the best they possibly can in life. And it was a lot of, deep work on myself to be able to do that, really looking at my own wounding, my shadow side, my challenges, my lessons in my life. And then, so it's 13 years ago, I met Alexander at a cafe, and he asked me my date of birth, and he proceeded to tell me all about myself in 20 minutes, and the good and the not so good. It was like,
Yeah, was that really
really
shocking
nice
at the time?
things.
Yeah,
And
I don't recommend this strategy for picking up chicks. Yeah,
Too
not
much, too
necessarily
much
the
too
way to go.
soon.
Yeah.
yeah, but it worked for
Oh,
me.
good.
Yeah.
It worked. But so we joke that, I had spent about 20 years on this journey of growth and evolution within myself. And in 20 minutes, he laid all of that on the table, like a template of a lot of those things on the table in 20 minutes, based on this system of knowledge. So that really got me. I was like, I love things that are different out of the box. It's in my cards to play that way as well. But then when I started looking up friends and family, that's when it really, really just sealed the deal for me.
Right.
It was so healing and illuminating to look up my parents, my family, friends, past relationships, people I was no longer friends with, past lovers, it just like brought so much clarity knowing their cards to play, their energy patterns that they were playing versus mine. And then also the dynamic between the two. And that's my favorite topic. I love relationship dynamics when it comes to the cards. And that's really, it's just profound knowledge and so helpful
Wow,
for
that's
guidance.
cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Alexander, I'm just going to roll back and ask you then,
Yeah.
considering your experiences and everything, who are we and why are we here?
Ooh, I like it. You're going right in there. Well, for lack of a better word, we are a soul and we are playing a human game. And for example, my birth card, again, based on math, is the 9 of hearts. And I would say that we choose our cards to play before we come in. We choose the life path, the theme that we're here to explore, and then we forget so that we can have the immediate experiential engagement with whatever the theme may be, whatever the journey may be. It is a game that we're playing, and it's a challenging game. If it weren't challenging, we'd get bored. So I often am telling my clients that, yes, it's a challenging game. So have compassion for yourself that you haven't quite mastered it yet, because we judge ourselves. We want to be better. We should have done this or that. It's a lifelong game. And if it weren't challenging, you'd get bored. So it's a good thing that it's challenging. You're here to play along and play these patterns out. And I'm honestly, candidly, still learning that for myself. It's still a continual reframe for me of how can I look at this situation as if this is a game, which it is, and how can I play it rather than like double down on it or like try to control it or feel like I'm the victim of it. Oh, I don't like this. I wish it were different. Like, no, this is exactly what it is. And how can I engage in this present moment and play it like a game, like it's a Rubik's Cube or a riddle that I'm trying to solve? And how can I engage my life that way as a puzzle to solve, as a riddle, as a playground, monkey bars? And oh, I fell off when I tried to cross the monkey bars. All right, I'll try again. Let me see if I can master it this time. Or I'm a little scared to go down the slide. Okay, I'll take a deep breath, and then maybe tomorrow I'll be confident enough to slide down that big slide. Really and truly like a child at play, and the ancient wisdom of Jesus, to approach life like little children, and so on. That is the way for us to look at our life. And in my better moments, that's the way I do it. And I'm still learning as well.
Yeah, I think we never stop learning, to be honest. So you first recognized that 52-4-13 template as more than a coincidence. How did you actually get back into that to actually get that full understanding? I mean, did you study other ancient methods of reading the cards, or was this something that came to you intuitively that made a lot of sense?
You're asking a big question. There's multiple layers to this. So let me see if I can answer it in steps. When I first heard about it, as I mentioned at a party in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
there were already some books written about it. And this friend of mine had read a book about it. And so there was already a baseline of information, not much, but there was a baseline that I could read and look into. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the math is what sold me as well, that there are 52 cards in the deck, 52 weeks in the year, 4 suits, 4 seasons, 13 cards in each season, 13 weeks. No, did I say that wrong?
13 weeks
13 weeks in each season, 13 cards in the suit. And then when you add up the face values of the cards, the ace is 1, and then you have the 2 through 10. The jack is 11, queen is 12, and the king is 13. Add them together, 1 plus 2 plus 3. For all the 52 cards, you add them up, and you get 364. And then the Joker is the 53rd archetype. He's the 5th element in the 4-part construct, and his mathematical value is 5/4, or 1/1/4. So it's a perfect replica of our solar year. So that math is very interesting. The final piece of it, though, of what really persuaded me wasn't necessarily studying other systems or any other intellectual exercise. I was single at the time. I had just gone through a divorce. I'm living in New York City. And I was studying these cards, and it was still theoretical, and it was interesting to me. It seemed accurate to me. I would go out to local bars where, just my favorite places to go out as a single guy. And after a couple drinks, I'd start talking to the people around me, and I'd be like, there's this weird thing, and I don't know, maybe it's nothing, but I want to just ask you, like, what's your birthday? And they would tell me, and then I would say, oh, that means your birth card is the 5 of clubs, and it means this, this, and this about you. Now, this is in New York City, where people will tell you straight away what they really think. And they will. Famously, New Yorkers are famous for that.
Yeah,
And
they don't hold
I
back.
would say this to someone at the bar, and they'd be like, whoa, oh my God, that's so accurate. Hey, Bob, you got to get over here. And this guy's doing this thing with cards. And I did that over and over and over again. And eventually I was like, I think this is accurate. I think this might really be something. And then over the years of doing thousands of readings, finding that it's accurate for people. I can't explain really, truthfully, why, but it is, and it works, and it helps people. So that's the final piece of what convinced me, was the actual application of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think is the single most important thing the source cards reveal about a person?
They reveal a whole template of one's life path. So, why someone is here, their purpose, their gifts, their life lessons and challenges, their shadow side, dynamics of relationships. It's just this comprehensive sort of template of all about someone and the energy patterns that they're playing. And they can play those patterns on the high side or the low side. So, first, it's really about learning what the cards are for someone and then accepting and just taking in what those cards are. And then starting to explore within oneself. And, someone has to be ready for this. It's like, do you want to do the work? Do you want to look at yourself? Do you want to evolve and grow? So
Yeah.
when you're ready for it, it's like it offers so much wisdom and guidance as to how to live one's life in the best way possible, utilizing those patterns that I believe I'm a soul. I chose these patterns, choosing my birthday, utilizing those patterns that are in play. So, yeah, so it's really just, again, it's first to just know them and to have the awareness and to accept what they are. Sometimes there could be resistance. And people are like, I don't play my cards that way, or that's not me. But it's really taking it in and saying, wow, can you explore places where you might do those things and be honest with yourself and explore and self-reflect using these patterns that you are actually playing out and then playing them consciously, playing them on purpose as opposed to by default. because we do things by default. You know, it's like that's how we create, we manifest by default. So we might as well purposefully create our reality, knowing the energy patterns that are in play.
Knowing the
Mm.
tools we have at our disposal, and knowing
Yeah.
the crayons we have in our crayon box. I've got a red and a yellow crayon, and you've got a green and a blue crayon. We're going to color different things, but we still have free will to create the picture that we want.
Yeah. Yeah. Curious about the way it maps to, say, the seasons and the year. Is there any way that you can actually lay the cards out for a season for yourself and then understand what you should be looking out for?
Another great question. So we have a template for life of our cards, and we have a template for each year. And within each year, you have a card for a 52-day cycle and also weekly cycles. So it's not exactly a season, but yearly, 52-day, weekly, and then daily cards. You could have like a daily horoscope kind of air quotes thing if you wanted to.
Mm.
And we do have that as an option on our website. People have purchased that. If they want to read along with their cards every single day, they can do that. And that's what we do as well. So, yes, you do have cards every year that show you the cycles of your year, if that's what you meant.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was asking that. So that makes me understand then that maybe you can look at your own cards and go, okay, so I'm this sort of person, and then
Yeah.
in comparison to what's happening for this day, I should expect this, and that way
Yes,
I can
absolutely.
work
Yes.
better with it, flow with that.
Yes. And also, people do use this for fortune telling, and that's not the way we teach it or use it. So it's
Okay.
really about utilizing the energy. How can this energy guide me? When I first learned the system, I did have a reading with someone who told me my cards for the year, the yearly cards, not my life path of cards, which are for my entire life, but the yearly cards. And one of my yearly cards was an ace of spades. And the person said, that's the death card of death, of losing. You could lose some people in your life that you're really close to this year. Well, like that whole year, like it was kind of buzzing in the back of my head, someone's going to die, who's going to die? My parents are going to die. I mean, it just, it didn't feel good, I should say, like I really
Yeah.
held on to that in some ways. And at the end of the year, no one close to me died. But the Ace of Spades, the Ace is about initiating new beginnings. Spades are about consciousness, belief systems, assumptions. So I can utilize that and say, wait, I can let go of some old patterns and belief systems in my life this year, as opposed to like being paranoid or something that something's going to happen. It's more about utilizing, how can I use this energy to the best of my ability? Like what do I believe about myself and life that doesn't serve me? And can I end that? And can I initiate new belief systems about myself and about life, that kind of thing? And, funny enough, I let go of even, a definition that these cards would predict the future for me. It didn't predict the future. I let go of that belief that could really, tell me what was going to happen, initiating a new belief. So yeah, it's really about empowering oneself.
Yeah, I can hear that in that. Now, the Joker became the third symbol for leap years. What practical meaning do you give that fifth element for people living today?
Well, anyone born on December 31st is born to play the Joker. So they have a special role. And if you ever meet someone born on December 31st, you will pretty quickly, once you get to know them, recognize that they're different and they feel different. They know that they're different. And in the classic archetype of the lonely clown, they can feel lonely and depressed and misunderstood. But the Joker has a special role. You see on the diagram behind us that the Joker is the pinnacle card. He's right up at the top. That's the pinnacle of understanding of our reality, to appreciate the cosmic giggle, to get the joke. It's all fun. It's all for play, not take ourselves too seriously. The role of someone born to play the Joker is to show us the places where there are cracks in the matrix. And as I think it was the poet Rumi said, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And that's the role of the Joker, is to point out the cracks, hence they can get kind of cracked up themselves, and then to help the light get in, to help that, let's call it cosmic light or divine light, enter into our human matrix. So that's the special role of the Joker.
Yeah, understood. How do you connect the deck to sacred geometry and the tree of life without turning it into an abstract system?
Well, that's another multi-layered question. Do you have a background in philosophy?
No. Well, I do, but I'm not an academic by any means.
I like these philosophical style questions. Let me approach the answer by saying that the cards represent the fractal nature of reality, as above, so below. The microcosm is a holographic representation of the macrocosm. The theoretical is the same as the experiential. The abstract is the same as the application of it. I told you the earlier part about how I finally accepted the truth of the system was in the real, tangible, experiential reality of drunken New Yorkers at a bar and talking to them about their cards to play. It can be just abstract, for sure. For some people, it can be an intellectual exercise. I think for those types of people, that's when it becomes more of a fortune-telling instrument, a mental curiosity to satisfy their own mental fears and worries. Like, what's going to happen in the future? Oh no, let me find out. It's a fear-based approach. So it can be just abstract. It is abstract. I mean, it is. We can talk about it theoretically. So it is an abstraction at that level. The sacred geometric part of it, that's a much deeper topic. Do you want to say something? You pulled stuff out to talk about it.
Alexander has done a lot of channeling on these sacred symbols and taken this system to the next level. They're really most of it is all about fortune telling, predicting future. And Alexander is using this as an empowerment. Well, we are as an empowerment tool, coaching people to play their cards well. And, some of the things he meditated on was like, for example, so here I have the King of Spades, and, we're familiar with this picture of the King of Spades, but the pip pattern underneath the King of Spades is something that came to Alexander. Here you're talking about a sacred symbol, that there's so much going on in that. You can see a lot of different symbols inside of that patterning.
That's the 13 of spades.
13 of spades.
So that's the arrangement of the patterning for the number 13, where the 13 has been known as the king, and the king is the icon that has been placed over the top of this pattern. This is the phi symbol. It's also the Chinese character for the middle way.
See here, phi.
The phi symbol.
And finding the middle way, which is what the kings are about. The kings are all about finding the middle path.
And then the queen is the golden rectangle. And so there's the queen.
Here she is.
But then the 12 pips, it's a golden rectangle.
Yeah, right.
Perfectly symmetrical, perfection, beauty.
And the king and the queen, that's what, air quotes, rules the kingdom. Those are the patterns that define our reality. Those are the structures and building blocks of our reality. That's the fractal patterning with which our reality is organized. And that's represented in, air quotes, the king and the queen of our reality. And there's much more, but, that's a taste.
And then, I pulled out some other cards that should show you because is this video only, or they're listening?
This video as well, yeah.
Video as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so, and if you have a deck at home, you can pull out your deck and look at these patterns as well. We've taken the numbers off the cards so that you can really see the patterns. So, for example, here's a 3 of clubs, and this is a channel. There it is. There's a channel. The pip patterns.
If you're just listening, it's a straight line we're pointing to.
And a channel or a compass marching to the beat of your own drum. Clubs represent the mind, mental knowledge, wisdom. So these pip patterns show us how to play the cards well. When on the low side, this 3 of clubs can become indecisive when it goes to the side. And so it's about coming back into alignment, into that channel of energy, the channel of wisdom coming through someone. Someone playing the 3 of clubs, or, somebody's playing the 3 of clubs for their life, or, there are cards in play every single day, right? So then we're all playing those cards. We're all being affected by those cards. Today, for example, is the Jack of Spades when we're doing this recording. So we're all being affected by the Jack of Spades energy. Actually, tomorrow, it's a different time for you. So actually, you're playing a different card right now.
Yeah, I'm in the future.
You are.
You are. I love that.
You are. For you,
fantastic.
It's February 2nd as of this recording, right?
That's great.
That's correct.
Yeah. So for you, it's a 10 of spades energy that you're in at the moment, and for us, a Jack of Spades. But yeah, each day is a pattern. When we know the pattern, then we have a more informed choice. We have more information with which to make a decision about how we want to play out that day.
Okay. That's nice and clear. I've got a question for you around the birth card system. And I wanted to know, can you walk us through how a birthday becomes the 13 plus life cards? What does the plus usually represent?
Oh, okay. The plus is meaning that we actually have more than just the 13 in our life. We've developed that shorthand to say it's 13 plus because it's more than 13. You have the 13 in your life path, but then every year you have cards in play as well. And then even for your life, you also have underlying cards that represent challenges or karmic lessons that you're here to learn. So that's really just our shorthand of saying it's 13 plus, more than even just the 13 in your life path.
What do the 13 cards typically show about vocation, relationships, and timing? And can you give any examples of that are really stand out?
Well, do you want to do the first part and then I'll do the
Relationships.
examples? Like, what does it show about career or relationships as 13 cards in the life path?
So there's so many different places to look in the template of the cards at as to the dynamics of relationships. So they can show a good match, romantic match for someone. They can show dynamics for like what your child's cards are playing versus the parents' card that they're playing. Because often the child is playing a different card than the parent, so the person can learn, how to support their child in playing the child's cards well, as opposed to like putting, whatever the parents' cards or energy patterns are onto the child. There's so many different things to look at. Like if you are playing the same number or the same suit, often people are attracted to each other. Like, for example, like a two of clubs and a two of diamonds might they kind of like get in sync and connect with each other because they're both twos, or a club and a club like might have a really stimulating conversation and be like, wow, have a lot to talk about because they're both playing clubs. Those are ways to connect. And then you have your life path of cards. Someone else has a life path of cards. If you are in each other's life path of cards, that also shows dynamics. So you have, for example, a Venus card. So that would be a love connection for you, the Venus card that's in your life path. Somebody playing your Saturn card, which is about life lessons and challenges, might be challenging for you. You might feel tension with them. You might butt heads with them, or you might just like be really open to like learning from them, like, wow, I could really learn a lot from, and
I mean, there's so much to get into. And so there's a lot in relationships, but you also asked about career.
Yeah.
And so, for example, you could in your life path look at your Jupiter card. So my birth card is the Nine of Hearts. In my life path, my Jupiter card is the Jack of Clubs. And that Jack of Clubs will show me how to have more financial abundance in my life. And if I were to
That's
meet
cool.
someone, if I were to meet someone who's born to play the Jack of Clubs, and I know this because I know my cards, right away my ears perk up and I'm looking and I'm excited because I know that energetically this person brings me more financial abundance. And it may not show up directly as they're going to be a client or they're going to buy something, but they may have an idea. And so I'm listening closely. They may say something just casually like, "Oh, this and this and this, and this person is doing this, and I learned this thing over here." And I know that if I follow that thread, I'll find something that will bring more abundance in my life. Maybe I'll read that book, and that book will give me some guidance that will help me make money. So I'm listening carefully if I meet someone born to play the Jack of Clubs, because I know that they'll help me find more abundance. And then the last part of your question, examples, there are so many examples we could give of how this has helped people. I'll give one quick one, which is a client of mine who was a woman who was born to play the Eight of Diamonds. And the Eight of Diamonds is the alpha, it's the chief. And when she came to me as a coaching client, she thought she had hit a glass ceiling. She was senior vice president in her Fortune 500 company. And she's like, I like my company. I like it there a lot, but I keep getting passed over for promotion. I think I've hit that proverbial glass ceiling. And I looked in her cards and I said, well, you have the card to be an alpha. You could be a boss. And she's like, I kind of feel that way, but I also feel like it would be arrogant of me to think that way of myself, right? So then through the coaching process, it's learning to unravel and disentangle all the past conditioning and programming where she, as a woman raised in a chauvinistic household with four older brothers, never saw herself as a boss, as a chief. And through the coaching work over a several month process, unraveling that, she called me up one day. She's like, Alexander, you're not going to believe it. I just got promoted. They want me to be the C-suite executive of the Pacific Rim division, and I'm going to run this entire division. I'm like, what happened? What changed? She's like, I don't know. Nothing changed. The boss called me in and said, we want you to do it. From my perspective, the only thing that changed is she started, as Vicky is saying, accepting herself. And then she starts exuding that vibrational frequency of, I am a boss. She's no longer doubting herself. She's in that state of acceptance. And that's what we've seen over and over and over again for people is when we start accepting our cards to play, and as Vicky said, consciously playing them on purpose, then synchronistically everything lines up. And I've seen it over and over and over again. The right people show up, doors open, all because we're playing our cards right. And that was the other proof. You asked me earlier, like what convinced me. That was another big part of the proof when I first started doing this work, that people would come back to me and be like, you're not going to believe it, but I met my soulmate, or I got that job.
Nice.
You know, and the only thing that changed was that they started consciously focusing on playing their cards right. And then that lines them up energetically to be in the right place at the right time.
So knowing the patterns that they should be playing allowed them to manifest the reality that they needed to manifest.
Bingo.
Beautiful. Love it. I went to your website and I did actually put my birth date in and I got my ones as well. Don't rub your hands again.
Here we go.
Here we go. I've been wanting to know the whole time.
Birth card is the Ace of Clubs.
Okay. What's your
So that ties in
personality
really
card?
nicely what I'm doing anyways.
Yeah.
You know, that makes a lot of sense. And then my personality card is the Queen of Clubs.
Double clubs.
Wow,
You-
fantastic.
You are here to gather
Fantastic.
knowledge.
Yeah, I feel like that for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Initiating new knowledge. Are you very intuitive? Like psychic
Yeah.
intuitive? Yeah.
Everything. I've been to the end of the universe and back. So yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Ace of Clubs, you're here to initiate new knowledge. And then the
Yep.
Queen of Clubs, you nurture people with the knowledge that you do have.
While I'm running this podcast.
There you go. There you go.
I got a question about the birth cards though. How stable do they stay through a lifetime considering that people going through life change and can change dramatically?
It's your card for life. Your birth card is your birth card for life. How you play it changes everything. And for me, I know my 9 of Hearts, when I didn't know it and when I played it badly, I would get into some very unhappy situations for myself. And then when I've more and more and more chosen to play it well, I've seen really miraculous things happen for me by consciously choosing to play it well. So the life can look very different depending on how we play it, the outcomes that we get, but the card stays the same.
Well, and also to answer your question, like it can just keep getting better and better as far as I'm concerned. Like I can just play it even better and even better. Like as I work on myself, as I self-reflect, as I play the 5 of diamonds, like, you know, more and more out of the box, giving a fresh perspective, being myself in all situations, you know? So I feel like we can progress in it, even though it's the same card, like, you know, for the whole life.
It sounds like it leads people to a path of true authenticity.
Yes, exactly. And then the other
Well
part
said.
of you, exactly. The other part of your question is that we do have cards every year. So we have new cards every year within the larger concentric circle, this nested realities of the yearly dynamics. So you're born to play the Ace of Clubs with a Queen of Clubs personality. And then every year you have new cards that show you themes and lessons and opportunities for your year.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm going to have to learn more for sure. So
Yeah.
for practical applications, just say I'm a CEO who's successful but empty. What first practical step with the source cards would you have me take?
Know your source cards.
Know thyself.
Yeah, we hear this a lot because you could be on the outside, you look really successful, but you feel empty, right? Something's missing. And you know, most of the time we see it's because the person doesn't know their cards to play and they're not playing their cards. You know, maybe they're using their will, things that they've, you know, learned from the outside world, from their parents, from other teachers, but they're not really activating their unique essence within them. The thing that's coming to me as an example would be like someone playing a heart card and yet they're doing things all like from their will and like, you know, like as I've just suggested. But actually, if they're playing a heart card, they really need to come forth from their emotional intelligence and from their emotions and express their vulnerability and their emotions, even as a leader, like, or in a work situation. And so like once they start doing that, they feel more fulfilled within themselves because they're actually activating that, you know, the template, that energy pattern that they're playing based on source cards. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And so then to add on to what Vicky's saying, the simple way to say the answer is what's missing for such a person who has all the success on paper. They've climbed the top of the mountain. The thing that's missing is their connection to themselves. That's what's missing. And that's why they feel unfulfilled. And this is a simple toolkit. It's not the only one. You can use, there's so many toolkits out there, so many different esoteric maps and ways to get in touch with ourselves. This is the one I like the best, that we like the best, simplest, in our opinion, to use, easiest, and it's visual. It's a way to get in touch with, as you said, what is our authentic vibration? What is the resonance of who we are that is most satisfying to our soul? Not what looks like on paper, not what, you read a book about how to be a business leader, you have your MBA about how to be successful. What is it that truly resonates your soul? What is it that satisfies your soul? Here's a map to see that.
Couples, how does knowing your partner's card improve conflict resolution and intimacy?
Here she comes.
Gosh, it's just so helpful to know the energy patterns that the other person is playing, to have more compassion for them, to fully accept them more. I feel like there's so much about acceptance, accepting oneself and our own cards to play versus this other person, seeing them and the cards that they're playing. It's like you can accept, the way they show up because you know the patterns underneath. You know the patterns that are in play. First of all, that's hugely helpful just to know, to have the awareness of it. And then there are things like, the high side versus the low side of a card in play. If you're, this other person is playing the low side, oh, wow, like they're, in the lower side of that pattern right now. That doesn't have anything to do with me. They're playing that out. Like that's what's happening right now. And you can approach them differently knowing that that's what's happening. We have a shadow card, Pluto card, in our life path of cards, something that's been very helpful with our clients, with our relationship with each other, is knowing the Pluto card of the other person. The Pluto is the unconscious hidden fears. So often the person is not, unless they've done a lot of work on themselves, they're not aware of that unconscious hidden fear. And so knowing that, where they're coming from when there's some kind of dynamic, like a challenging dynamic that's happening, and they're showing up a certain way. It's like, oh, like their shadow is in play right now. And you can see that energy pattern in the card. That's their Pluto card, And so we have this with each other. Like I have the Pluto card of the Four of Hearts. The Four is a box. It's about structure, foundation, organization, hearts, emotions. On the low side, I can push my feelings into a box. I can be like, everything's fine. And I have this like nice facade. No, I'm going to just put those nicely in a box, right? And that would like in the beginning really not feel good for him at all.
That
It would infuriate him, absolutely infuriate him, because he'd be like, tell me what you're feeling. I'm not feeling anything. I'm fine, kind of thing. And now his Pluto card is the King of Clubs, the King of Knowledge. And on the low side,
Well, apparently,
I'll let you say it.
I mean, I don't see it. Apparently, on the low side, the King of Clubs comes out and like
with a club.
With a club.
The King of Clubs,
Verbally bopping people on the head and being condescending or arrogant. Like, I know the truth. And in my shadow, because it's in my shadow, like in the sense of a Jungian, Freudian idea of you have an unconscious that you don't fully appreciate or see. In our unconscious side, there's an archetypal pattern, and the cards show this archetypal pattern. And for me, the King of Clubs is I know better, or I have the answer, or I'll tell you what you're really thinking or what you're really doing. Yeah, she doesn't like that. So no, nobody likes unsolicited advice. But so that would be our dovetail dynamic. And we started calling it our shadow dance. And I think that that's what does in every relationship. I think that that's a major component of why couples don't work out. And that's why you don't see it except in an intimate dynamic, because you only really reveal your shadow side to an intimate partner. You may not even show it outside in the world, but in an intimate dynamic, your shadow side eventually comes out and you don't see it. You don't recognize it. To you, it's totally unconscious. You don't even think that you're doing it. And so she wouldn't even think that she was hiding her feelings. And we would.
Yeah. And so, I mean, just to further explain like how it would play out is like, so I would be shoving the feeling down and he'd be like, tell me your feeling. And I'm like, no, I don't have a feeling about that. Tell me your feeling. And it would just like keep this loop of like me not, I'd go deeper into the hole of not expressing myself and he'd go deeper into like, the club. the clubbing. And then finally it's like I need to self-reflect on like, am I really like burying or numb to feelings right now? Like, and it would take me a while. I'd be like, I'd have to really, really search. Yeah, you know what? I'm actually angry about what happened and I wasn't realizing it. And then I would come forth and say, this is what I was really feeling. And then he would just like melt because I came forth and actually said what I was really feeling. And then, like, then he can also reflect on the king of clubs, in the shadow for himself. And then that makes for a better relationship because now we're communicating from a place that's not
of authenticity. Instead of being in denial about the shadow aspect.
Yeah. Oh, I love that because it sounds like it's bringing up the hidden truths about ourselves. I'm curious to ask this because it sounds like it could be mapped to astrology. Have you ever done that at all? You
Well,
have?
it does. It intersects with astrology. You have in your life path of cards, you have a Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, etc. You have planetary cards. It overlaps very neatly with astrology. And in order to calculate your personality card, we need to know your astrological sign. So let's say you're born into the sign of Taurus, Venus rules Taurus. So then your Venus card in your life path becomes your personality. I'm born into the sign of Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo. Mercury card in my life path, which is the seven of clubs, that's my persona. So we use astrology and it does map to astrology. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, it does. Just got a question around, has the system ever failed to help somebody at all? I mean, did you have any experiences with that?
That's a good question. As Viki said already, people have to be willing.
Yeah.
If you're not willing, then it's like the Charlie Brown wah 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 wah, and this just kind of washes over someone. I've personally learned to never share anything for anyone about their cards unless they ask. In the beginning, I was so giddy and excited. I'd be like, "What's your birthday?" Blah, blah, blah. And some people would be like, "What? Like, dude, then what?" So I've learned I can only share it with people who want to know. And those people have, knock on whatever, those people have always found it helpful.
Yeah, we've had such experience a couple times of like people gifting people a session who didn't really want the session. And then we did the session and we were both like, we will never do that again. Because the person just did not want to.
Too hard.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear
it.
Yeah.
And then it's like we're giving them like coaching and healing and insights. And it's like giving them unsolicited advice because they didn't want it for themselves, Yeah, it's interesting.
It's very, I'll just say it's very flattering and I love it. People will buy a session from us and give it to someone as a birthday gift.
Right.
And so it's flattering and I'm honored. I'm honored. Like, wow, you want to buy a consultation and give it as a gift to someone or a Christmas present? But then that person doesn't want to hear it. And so then it doesn't go well.
Buy them the book.
Yeah.
Start
with that.
Yeah.
I used to book readings for a psychic, and nearly every one of the ones which were bought for somebody else, they didn't go so well.
Yeah.
I found that really fascinating. But this actually reinforces that understanding that people, when they're not ready, can't hear anything.
Yeah.
How do you work with clients who carry trauma that resists symbolic frameworks?
Whoa. That resists it.
So you don't actually have to say anything about cards to anybody.
Okay.
You can just look up a client's cards, ask them for their birthday. I mean, I've asked my clients for their birthday way before I even learned this system. And actually, when I went back, it was really clarifying because so many of the things we had talked about for years were in the cards to play. And then just speak from a place of patterns. You have, it's
So, for example, without saying the cards, but knowing the cards, do you have a tendency to bury your feelings? Right.
For someone born to play the five of diamonds.
Or for someone like my cards, do you have a tendency to speak down to people from a condescending place? And you can ask the questions. And we've had many psychotherapists tell us that they use this tool in that way. It guides them to which are the right questions to ask.
Now, for listeners that are interested, you did say read our book. That's probably a good place to start. So Now, with the ones that want to study deeper, is there any math or symbolic or seasonal readings that they should learn first to become competent at their own readings?
Well, I don't know that you need to become competent to do your own readings before you can get benefit from looking up your cards. I mean, certainly we have certification training programs if people do want to become competent to do their own readings, but I don't think you need that first. I think the best thing to do is just dive in and explore, which we've hopefully made easy to do on our website, right on the homepage of thesourcecards.com. You put in your date of birth and you can start exploring.
Yeah, great. Right.
Yeah, and then if you want to learn more than just the first two cards, I would recommend getting the book Play Your Cards Right, A Sacred Guide to Life on Earth. That gives the entire life path of cards, and then you can really start exploring some of these other cards, like the more challenging energy patterns. And
Look,
yeah,
you've
start
opened
there.
my eyes to cards in a different way that I'm going to get that book. So very cool. I really appreciated this conversation. So where can we point people so they can find you?
Thesourcecards.com is where you can start exploring. We are also on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and it's at The Source Cards.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on the show and explaining your understanding of the source cards and how they work for people. I've appreciated your time. It's such a different way of thinking about it, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
It's been a real pleasure. You asked challenging, interesting
Yes,
questions. So thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
a lot
you.
of people say that, and I love that.
Yeah.
That would be your Ace of Clubs energy. You have those pointed questions that get in there.
I appreciate that, and I'll
Yeah.
be looking more into that myself for sure. All right.
Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Who ever thought that playing cards could have so much depth? All power to Viki and Alexander for the work they're doing, because this is totally unusual and very, very interesting. I'm going to get their book and learn more about how to cast my own life path reading and also to look at my year. It's best to have like a roadmap, isn't it? And this is a way to do it. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. And if you've enjoyed it, reach out to Viki and Alexander yourself and say thank you. I'd appreciate that, and I'm sure they would as well. And if you've liked today's show, please like it. If you've enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy this one too. Thanks so much for listening. Next episode is going to be just as amazing as this one.